Great. So, as I said at the top, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. This is the first of Brunel's summer series of publishing webinars and creative writing workshops. My name is Helen Cullen. I'm a novelist and a reader in creative writing at Brunel, and just so delighted that I've been able to work on curating this program and to get to be in this amazing webinar this evening with these wonderful editors. Our aim is to support as many aspiring writers as we can, both in the development of their craft, but also on their path to publication. In addition to this event series, we're going to be, as part of our partnership with the Nero Book Awards, launching a new writing competition for unpublished writers in August. That's the Nero New Writers Prize in association with Brunel. So keep an eye out for that. But this evening, we're thrilled to kick things off with our first publishing webinar, Meet the Editors. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. I'm going to be talking to the panel for about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll open up to questions from all of you. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat box, and you can just drop your questions in there as you go along, anything that occurs to you, and then we'll fly through as many of those as we can towards the last part of the hour. But for now, I am delighted to welcome to our webinar Joelle Owusu from Murky Books, Katie Bowden from Fourth Estate, and Sam Jordison from Galley Beggar Press. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We're all very excited to have you in the kind of digital Brunel world. Thank you all for being here. And so I think I'd love to begin maybe by asking each of you to introduce your publishing house, your imprint. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your ethos and the kind of books that you like to publish to get us started. So maybe Joelle, we'll start with you if that's okay.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Joelle Owusu, and I'm Editorial Director and Imprint Lead at Murky Books, which is a part of Penguin Random House. What else do I say? I never know what else to say. I publish fiction and non-fiction, and I've been at the company for, it would actually be a year next year. And I was previously at another Big Five publisher, which was Hachette, and then an indie publisher before that. So coming up to a decade in publishing, a decade of editing, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Joelle. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the books that you publish at Murky Books, the kind of books that you like to publish, so that we get a sense of what sort of things are in your portfolio.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, of course. So, a little bit about Murky Books. We were created in 2018 by the musician Stormzy, and he really wanted to create a new publishing house that created culturally significant titles. And we're really known for publishing books from writers from the global majority and giving, people who probably wouldn't have had a chance to publish before that chance to actually have a successful publishing career. And so that's what I'm all about. Whether I published at Hachette or my previous jobs, I've always been about genuine inclusivity and diversity. And that's also diversity of thought, ages, disabilities, backgrounds as well. And I've published many a book. I used to specialize in nonfiction, but I do a lot of fiction now these days. Murky published Keisha the Sket, which won a British Book Award in 2021, which we call Nibbies in the industry, which is a real kind of landmark for us. I am publishing Derek Owusu. I've brought him back to the list, which is super exciting, and some more that I can't announce yet. But I think one of the most exciting books that I published a few years ago was Viola Davis's memoir called Finding Me in 2022, which won us a Grammy, which was really, really lovely. So really, really broad range of fiction and non-fiction, and that's continued at Murky as well.
That's incredible. Wow. And Derek Owusu is a former graduate of Brunel. He did the MA Creative Writing here. So that's a really nice connection that I didn't know about. So yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Joelle. Sam, maybe tell us a little bit about Galley Beggar.
Sure. Yes, I'd be happy to. So I am Sam Jordison. I'm the co-director of Galley Beggar Press, and we are very small. In fact, there are really two of us who run the company, me and my much better half, Eloise Miller. So as well as being the co-director, I'm an editor. I get involved in design, typesetting, all kinds of different parts of the process. The company, what can I tell you? We set up in 2012, and even though it's more than 10 years ago, I still struggle to explain exactly what it is we do. We are small, as I say, we publish 2 or 3 books a year, but we hope they're going to be books that have big impact. So we've had a lot of success getting on prize long list, short lists, and winning them. We mainly publish fiction, some short fiction. I always like to hope that our tastes are very diverse and we're open to all kinds of things. But I guess over the years, you could probably see patterns. You might even be better at seeing patterns than I am if you read them all. And of course, I'd highly recommend that you do. But Ellie and me, we both love sentences essentially. So that's the first thing we go for. We love good writing, and everything else follows from that.
That's so great, Sam. And of course, you have the great honor of having discovered Emer McBride with
Yes.
your first acquisition. So, I mean, that's what a way to start off your life in a publishing house. Amazing. That's lovely. And so, Katie, can you tell us a little bit about Fourth Estate and your work there?
Yes, definitely. So I'm an editorial director at Fourth Estate, which is the literary and prize-winning imprint of HarperCollins. So we started as an independent publisher in the 80s and then were acquired by HarperCollins. And essentially we've historically specialized in literary fiction and a bit of non-fiction. So our kind of big heritage writers include people like Arundhati Roy, Joan Didion. We published Jonathan Franzen, we published Hilary Mantel. So we have kind of a prize-winning focus at the core of our list. But actually our list is much broader than that. And our real focus is on high quality writing, like really brilliant writing, great storytelling. And we also have a cookery list, which my colleague Louise publishes, which is really, really beautiful and includes like Anna Jones and Nigel Slater. So we also do some kind of a more diverse list than just literary fiction. My list specifically is on the kind of upmarket commercial literary side of Fourth Estate. So actually for a publisher with quite a small curated list, we tend to have significant commercial successes every year. Not all of them mine, but we do have a side of the list which is again still focusing on great writing, but also brilliant storytelling, great characters, and the widest possible commercial audience. So I'm specifically always looking for plot and characters alongside beautiful writing. So some of my writers include Coco Mellors, who wrote Cleopatra and Frankenstein and Blue Sisters, Oisin McKenna, who wrote a book called Evenings and Weekends that has been really wonderfully received this year and last year. And next year, I think the things that I'm most excited about are I'm publishing a novel by Jeanette McCurdy, who wrote the brilliant memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, which was just like a kind of runaway bestseller that I don't think anyone expected to happen. She is such a brilliant writer, and this is her first foray into fiction, which I'm really excited about. And I also am publishing a book called Yesteryear, which I love, which is a kind of like a very, very smart political thriller about a trad wife who wakes up in 1805 and has to actually churn butter and be the kind of perfect Mormon wife, and all of the things that she'd been saying she'd been doing on social media, she has to do in real life. So my list is quite commercial, but it retains the Fourth Estate ethos of really great writing, really brilliant storytelling, and really smart, kind of thoughtful plotting.
Amazing. I mean, it sounds like listening to you all that no matter what anyone is writing who's joined us on the call this evening, there is a potential home for them out there because you've got such diverse lists. So that's a great thing, and you're all doing such wonderful work. I think what would be helpful maybe for us to start off with is to talk about just the first steps of all of this, which is how writers can get their work to you. I mean, many publishing houses, you have to submit via literary agent for you to have an opportunity to read someone's work. But it would be great to hear in particular how each of you work and what your process is in terms of how you find your authors, if it's just that way through literary agents or if there are other ways. I know, for example, Sam and Galley Beggar Press, you're open to writers sending you work directly. Is that true? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you find your writers to start us off.
Yeah, the great mystery. We are open to writers sending us their work, but we have to limit it very carefully because we get completely overwhelmed. So we open a submission window. It's more than a year since we last opened it. We still haven't read all the submissions, so that gives you an idea of the volume of stuff that we get. But we do like to have these open submissions because some of the very best things we found have come through that. But that's not the only way. So we also work with agents, of course. We have an annual short story prize, which is a great thing in and of itself, and you know, a really good way of showcasing some excellent writing. But it's also a good way for us to get in touch with writers. And in fact, just today, someone who did very well on our prize once has sent in a manuscript, and after I finish this, my plan is to go and read that, and I'm very excited about it. So that happens. We also find books in strange and mysterious ways. One of the stories I most like telling is that a writer of ours, Paul Stanbridge, who has published 2 books with us so far, and I am convinced is a genius. We met him because he sat next to Ellie, my co-director, on a bus, a school trip to Great Yarmouth. They weren't at school, I should say. They were parents. And we're based in Norwich. And there was our local primary school had a trip to SeaWorld in Great Yarmouth, I think it was. And Paul and Ellie got speaking, and he explained that he had done a PhD on David Jones. Now, I don't expect everyone to know who David Jones was, and so it's incredible good fortune that Paul sat next to the person who actually would know who David Jones was. Briefly, he's a wonderful avant-garde modernist poet who wrote an astonishing long-form poem called Anathemata, which is what Paul did his PhD on, kind of about the aftermath of the First World War. Quite heartbreaking, notoriously difficult to understand. Anyway, he started telling her about that. They realized they were simpatico, and he said, "Oh, I've written a stupid book as well," as he called it. But it turned out to be this wonderful retelling of Don Quixote, which was right up our street. And so we had the great honor and pleasure of publishing that. And then through Paul, we got another one of our writers, Alex Phoebe, who has published a lot of books with us. He's published some astonishing avant-garde fiction and also a fantasy series. So our most recent release, Water Black, which was book 3 in his Cities of the Weft trilogy. And that has been I'm going to say, monumental trilogy, but that's not just my words. I mean, that's what, you know, people in Locus and Strange Horizon and the serious fantasy and sci-fi magazines absolutely love Alex too. He is a marvel. So it's a question of having eyes and ears open all the time. Things can come in strange ways. We take people from creative writing courses. I mean, I like speaking at things like this and speaking to students. Annex novel, in fact, telenovela by Gonzalo Garcia, which is an incredible book. I'll tell you more about it later, because if I start talking about it, I'll go on forever. But he came partly through our short story prize, but I met him through the University of Kent as well, where he was doing a PhD in creative writing, and they kind of recommended him again after he'd come through the prize, and we've published 2 books with him, and they've been great. So all manner of ways, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Great. I mean, I think one of the things I'm hearing, and I'm sure everyone else is hearing there, is how important it is to talk to people about your work, share what you're writing on. You never know who might be sitting beside you on a bus, who might be the person who's going to make the connection happen for you. The publishing world can be, as you say, mysterious and serendipitous, and everyone needs to keep their fingers crossed for the person who sent you the manuscript earlier. We'll send them all the good publishing vibes that you like it now that you put that out into the world.
I do I do kind of, sorry to interrupt, I do I do have to kind of have a word of warning. Don't approach editors with your manuscript in hand unless they, they definitely ask for it. But
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. Oh, sorry. And Joelle, maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you find your writers.
Oh yeah, sure. It's interesting. So I should say that most traditional publishers, and what I mean by traditional publishers are mainly the big five publishers. So that includes HarperCollins, Penguin, where I work, Hachette, Simon and Schuster, Pan Macmillan. I think that's all of them. Am I missing one? I think I'm missing one. Usually we don't accept unsolicited manuscripts. And what that means is that an agent has to be in touch with the editor, and you have to be represented by an agent, a literary agent, and most of the reasons for that is because they're the salesperson, and it might sound a little bit kind of strange because it might sound like a bit of a middleman, but actually it's really good to have someone who you don't know, who isn't a family friend or a family member, take on your work and represent you and kind of tell you more about publishing in that way and kind of deal with the kind of emotional support. And so that's usually the reason. So a lot do come from literary agents. However, not every editor only deals with literary agents. I'm incredibly proactive, and so are most of my colleagues. And so I'm constantly reaching out to people, seeing if they've got, an idea, or we sometimes do something called IP, which is intellectual property as well, where we come up with the idea, whether it's fiction or non-fiction in-house, and then find a writer to do that. And we also at Merky, we're so pleased to have our own New Writers Prize, which has been running for 6 years now. And we publish a new writer every year who wins the prize, and usually about 1,000 people enter, and it's extremely hard to whittle it all down, but we do every year, and it's such a joy to discover new writers every single year. This year the winner was Abaka Deborah with his book Where Geezers Call Home, and we just published a book called Sunstruck, and I'm wearing my sun necklace in celebration of that, which came out when did that come out? It came out last month, and it's been nominated for Waterstone's debut fiction prize, which is really exciting for us. It's the first Merky book to have done that. And so it's a little bit of both. I'm actually, although I get loads and loads from literary agents, I would actually say that I'm also very, very proactive, and kind of like Sam, actually, I'm everywhere. Like, I'm at parties, I'm in the park, I'm on the bus, and as soon as people see my Penguin tote, we usually get talking about books or on the tube and stuff. And I don't have a card, but usually if someone does say they have an idea and we get talking and it does sound interesting, I am interested in hearing about it. And so I always say that having an agent isn't everything, but you should consider getting one if you're looking to be published by a traditional big five publisher, because that's just the way we've done things, but it's not the only way to do things. I just want to make that really, really clear. It's not the only way to do things.
Great, thank you, Joelle. How about you, Katie? How does it work with you in Fourth Estate?
So we only accept agented submissions, although, I mean, the exception to that is sometimes if there is a person with a particular profile, often like a journalist, for example, who has written about a particular topic. My colleague Michelle actually is really, really good at this. She's our publishing director, and she's a fantastic nonfiction publisher, among other things. And she is very good at identifying trends in the media and journalists who are writing about other things, and kind of like creating a book idea with them. But from my perspective, and on the fiction side, partly because we actually publish so widely in terms of range of fiction at Fourth Estate that the number of submissions that we receive across a relatively few editors, it's really just me and my colleague Kish who do most of the new fiction, the debut fiction. That we receive so many submissions anyway, that is the kind of way that we mostly find out about them. And there are obviously huge benefits to having an agent. They can advise you on how the publishing process works. They can, they're invaluable in terms of making sure that you are being published. We obviously do our best to publish you with, all of the passion and energy that you deserve, but an agent really advocates for you in a way that maybe you might not feel confident doing. And also they can negotiate royalties that are most favorable to you. So that's obviously a huge benefit. And I love working with agents. And I also love that there are particular agents that I will develop relationships with because of shared taste, and then you can really start to understand what a book that comes from a particular agent might be. So there's, that's, and I guess that's because I'm on the kind of more commercial end of fiction publishing, that's primarily where we find authors. But as everyone says, that's definitely not the only way. And on the literary side, there are publishers, obviously, like Sam, who find writers in lots of different ways, but also on the more commercial side. I mean, HarperCollins has a division called One More Chapter, which is a digital first imprint. So we publish in ebook, but that doesn't mean we only publish ebooks. I say we, I'm actually involved in it, and I wish I was, because I think it is some of the most creative and fun publishing that we do at HarperCollins. But it is, for example, one of their books recently ended up being a #1 bestseller in paperback after publishing first in ebook, and that would be either self-published books that the editors there find, or direct submission. They have a direct submission process, and people are opening up open submissions all the time. So it's worth looking. Lots of imprints will do competitions, or will look for writers, particularly in the genre area. So particularly rom-com, romantasy, and fantasy, particularly lots of open submission opportunities out there to look for. So yeah, I think mainly agented, but there's lots of opportunities if that's not the route you want to go.
Great, thank you. And we do have a panel event happening the week after next, where we have 3 literary agents talking all about how to get an agent, what you should hope to have as a relationship with your agent, how the whole process works. So hopefully anyone who's listening and you've all convinced them that this is a good idea can join and learn all about that the week after next if they're keen. But maybe we could talk a little bit now about what gets you excited out of all of these submissions that come across your desk. I mean, obviously you read probably hundreds of times more manuscripts than you could publish, which I'm sure gives you huge challenges around choosing what it is that you're going to put your time and energy and your passion into. Katie, maybe you can start us off telling us, what gets you excited? Is there there's probably no formula that you can anticipate, but what kind, what's the secret to getting to the top of that pile?
I mean, I was just thinking about this because you mentioned you were going to ask this question, and it's hard to say. I think a lot of the time it is about the agent that sends it to me, and there are agents that I just know have really fantastic taste, or at least taste that is shared with mine. So often that's something that will push it to the top of the pile. But actually, I find it's just in the reading itself that I get most excited. I find it very hard. It's very important to have a really clear pitch. That being said, I find it quite difficult to read a synopsis of a book, and often find it very hard to take it in. And quite often would rather just start reading the first chapter and see how it feels. So although, particularly in a publishing landscape, which is, it can be challenging at times commercially, and editors are looking for books that fit certain areas of the market. Having a clear pitch is very helpful. But I do think that a lot of it is about the voice, and I just feel like I really know when I start a book, getting that first chapter to be as compelling as possible is the most important thing. And for me personally, I think it's always about voice. There are certain books where you just feel like the voice is so exciting. I'm thinking about books like Yellowface, for example, where you just are like, I can't forget this person's voice, and I want to stay with them forever. However unhinged they might be, however crazy the things they're saying to me are, I need to stay in this person's voice. And so quite often that is what really grabs me.
Excellent. How about you, Joelle? What are you hoping pops up in your inbox?
I'm the same, actually. Voice. Sometimes there's a misconception that editors are looking for people with hundreds of thousands of followers, already coming with endorsements. I think people hear rumors that we search your social media and we only want to publish celebrities and all that kind of stuff. Like there is a space in publishing for that, but it really is about the quality of the writing for any editor. We don't want to have any book with our logo on it that is not a good book. So So it really is about the voice, the writing. For me, because I do fiction and non-fiction, the proposals that I receive are very different. Usually for fiction, we receive the entire book, the entire manuscript, the first draft or whatever, right? With non-fiction, usually it's the proposals, so a bit about the author, why they're the authoritative voice on whatever topic they're writing about, even if it is, you know, their memoir or their biography or whatever, or autobiography. And then usually maybe the first 3 chapters or the strongest chapters possible. And so usually non-fiction proposals are shorter, because obviously with fiction, we're reading the entire book. But what grabs me the most, especially in fiction, is if I can't stop reading. If I read the first 10 pages and I'm like, oh, can I just read the 11th? Oh, maybe I should read the 12th. And I just carry on. It's that feeling of, I need to know what happens. I need to know what happens. And so sometimes it is a feeling, but because I think all of us have been in the industry so long, we know what a good voice is, or what a promising voice is. Not every manuscript is perfect or comes, you know, super polished or anything like that. That's our job, to polish it up, you know, hopefully if we acquire it. But if a book is really, really, truly promising because of the writing and the voice, and yeah, like Katie said, the clear pitch, that's what kind of makes me want to move this along and hopefully acquire it in the future.
Excellent. And I know, Sam, you've kind of answered this maybe a little bit already, in terms of you saying I'm feeling it's like spidey senses from Sam as to, you know, how you've ended up with your catalogue of books. But is there anything that you've noticed that you think signals to you, yes, this is going to be a manuscript I'm interested in, or conversely, anything that you open up and you go, oh no, I know this isn't going to be quite right? You know, how are you filtering?
Yeah, what can I say? I mean, I think everything the other guys have said, I basically, that sounds right. It feels pretty similar to where I would be. It's very difficult to explain, because you know it when you see it, but before you see it, you can't really describe it. And in fact, one of the things that Ellie and me are definitely hoping for is to be surprised and to see the new thing. I guess we have quite a modernist sensibility in a way, and we're always like, oh, this does something new with language. This has, you know, that kind of ambition, that it is doing something I haven't seen before. I mean, that's exciting. So that kind of ambition we really go for. Other things that, you know, there are little signs that you pick up, I guess. I mean, I also don't find the synopsis very hard to read and quite boring. The truth be told, it's awful. I know they're so hard to write and you have to pour so much into them, but you know, there's only so much you can get for them. I find them really useful if I've started reading something and I'm wondering where it's going, and then I'll have a quick look at the synopsis and kind of think, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so they can be useful in some ways, but covering letters, you can tell a bit from them. I mean, one thing we always want to know is that people are actually interested in our press. You know, we have quite a unique niche within the publishing world. We have writers who we just love. You know, if someone likes Lucy Ellman, author of Ducks Newburyport, we kind of feel like we're going to be on a level with that person, and we're going to, you know, enjoy them in certain ways. So having that kind of understanding of where we're coming from is really important from us. But otherwise, it is those first few chapters. And you know, I always try, especially if something's interesting, to read more than the first chapter, because I mean, I'm sure this will be a common experience. Very often the bit of editing you do is to cut the first chapter or the first few words, because you know, it's just the author trying to find the way in, and kind of there's a bit of throat clearing, so you've got to get past that. But quite quickly you can tell. And then the thing is, you know, it's almost a physical sensation when you've got something really exciting. I know it's a terrible cliche, but the hairs on the back of your neck go up, and then you're just hoping that it will be sustained, and that, you know, it will feel this good throughout the whole book. And when it does, it's just the most wonderful thing. And I suppose one thing I could say about this, you know, the phrase is gatekeeping, which is quite off-putting, but we are not looking to reject people. I mean, rejecting people and saying no is the horrible part of the job, the bit that I just hate doing it. We're looking to find things and take people on. So, we're on your side as writers. We want your book to work, and it's wonderful when it does.
Well, that's so encouraging, Sam. I think everyone will be feel really positive hearing that. And also, Joelle, to your point about the fact that you're not concerned about social media presence or having any kind of profile. I think, I'd be interested to open this up to you all. Sam, you've mentioned there about showing that you have like a passion and an interest for the kind of literature that you publish, is something that you might take into consideration. But is there anything else apart from the manuscript that any of you would be considering when you're thinking about taking this book, to your team and saying, I'd like to publish this? Or is it all just about the words on the page? Does anyone have anything else that they look out for?
We always in-house look at the market. And when we say the market, I know it sounds super, super vague, but most of us have insights to what's working well and per genre, what's working well, what's maybe not working well, what's published recently. At Penguin, we actually have quite a large insights team who do a lot of kind of number crunching, and our sales team as well do a lot of that information for us. We have kind of up-to-date stats on just the state of the market. Like I said, what's working, what's possibly not working, or what's the new trend. We're always looking at what's new. Can we be the first to market in this? Oh, maybe we can actually take a risk on this and that. And so we take that into consideration as well. I think sometimes when there's been a really successful book in a certain genre, especially for fiction, within a year we get quite a lot of the same kind of book. And if we've already got a couple of authors on the list who are doing that, we might think, you know what, this market's a bit oversaturated in that. Perhaps the writer can put their own twist on it to make it a bit more unique. But we're always looking at trends as well. And just to clarify, not to say that we don't care about social media. I think for nonfiction, for us personally, we look at it a little bit more, because if you are writing a self-help book or an educational book or a biography of someone, we want to know, if you are the authoritative voice, why are you writing the book? And so, like I said, you don't have to have loads of followers, but you need to kind of prove that you are the person to write that book, and show us why you have that kind of authority. But yeah, there's loads of different things. Sometimes it really is just a feeling. I always like to know a bit more about the author. So sometimes I call up the agent and I say, what have they been like to work with so far? Where are they from? Like how did you find them? I like to know the backstory as well. And yeah, I never actually Google anyone. I think sometimes people think editors are kind of chronically online searching, going through LinkedIn's and stuff. I don't Google anyone. I see what's on the page and then I take it from there. We're not really kind of, there's no surveillance or anything like that. But yeah, we do look at insights. We look at, if you've done a book before, we look at your previous sales tracking as well, just to see where you are with that, if we can get the data. So there are actually quite a few things that we do. So yes, great story, but also genuine number crunching as well, and data analysis and market trends. And that actually really helps us to pitch the book, because editors, as much as we like it, we then have to go take it and then pitch to the wider team, which a lot of authors don't actually know about. It's not actually just our decision. There's wider people in the team who read and cast their kind of vote, if you will, as well. So a lot going on behind the scenes.
That's so helpful. Katie, were you going to jump in there with
I was just going to say, it's interesting on the question of profile, because you don't have to have, taking a novelist, for example, and I know the nonfiction side is slightly different. You don't have to have any kind of profile if your work is brilliant. That being said, it's not that we don't take those things into account, and I think that there is probably a lot of anxiety around debut novelists about like whether they need to have social media, for example. And I think there was probably a lot of advice 5 or 10 years ago that you have to have Twitter and all of these things. You don't have to. And actually I feel like it should only ever feel authentic to you. So if having a social media profile does not feel authentic, it's not something you enjoy doing, it's not something that you can really build yourself because you don't really, love posting content online, it really is sort of meaningless to have like a social media profile that isn't generating lots of excitement because you're not excited about it. So I wouldn't worry about that. But it is also worth noting that when we take things to acquisitions meetings and talk about a book, we are also talking about the author and what the author will bring to the publication. And when we're acquiring a book, we will often speak to the author on the phone or in person, hopefully. And obviously that's partly to give the author a sense of us and whether the author wants to be published by us, but also to get a sense of whether that person can talk about their work in a way that feels exciting and, it is the case that, for example, placing features coverage for novels, if the author of a novel has a personal story that kind of ties into the book, then that offers a whole extra kind of publicity angle. Or if they have published lots of short fiction elsewhere, or I'm thinking about like Oisin McKenna, for example, who I work with, was a spoken word poet and had a kind of profile as a spoken word poet before he wrote his novel. All of these things obviously add to like what we can do publicity wise, but it's by no means a requirement. But it is something that if you have something like that, don't fail to mention it in your submission to an agent, because all of that adds a little bit of like excitement to the way people would be able to talk about the publication.
Great, thank you. I'm guessing, Sam, it's a little bit different for you in Galley Beggar Press because you know, as you said, you and Ellie are your team. So, I mean, do you have the similar considerations or different considerations? Because as you mentioned, you only publish, 3 or 4 titles a year. So what kind of things are you thinking about? Is if you'd fall in love with the voice of a book, is that it, you're in? Or, what kind of things do you have to also take on board?
That is pretty much it. And we're in quite a luxurious position in a way, in that we don't have to answer to marketing people and we don't have to do the number crunching, because the reason we're here is to take these, what am I going to call them? Extravagant risks. And, every book we put out, because we have so few, is a risk that, there's an awful lot riding on it every time, which is quite frightening in some ways, but it's also really liberating, because it just means, well, if you're going to take a big risk, go for the thing that you absolutely love. And that's what it is. If we love it, we want to publish it, and we hope that other readers are going to feel the same. And so far people have felt the same, so it's worked. But of course we do due diligence, and we're not interested in social media profile, and I think in a way it would be almost off-putting nowadays having someone who's on social media a lot, because it's so dangerous and things go so wrong, and things can backfire and disappear, and you don't need me to tell you all of that. But we'll check that people aren't saying completely crazy things, and we like to talk to people before we take them on, so that we know we're going to be able to work together. We work really hard on editorials, so we want to know that process is going to work, and it's going to be fun both for us and for the author. If we're going to be putting someone through terrible agonies, we don't want to do that. So we check those things out, but we're not looking at trends. It would be wrong for us to do that, because we exist to do the other thing, really.
Oh, great, amazing. Thank you so much, Sam. I think before we open up to questions, it would be remiss of me to have these 3 brilliant editing minds in the room and not see what we can extract from you about editing manuscripts before they're sent out into the world. So it would be so lovely to hear any thoughts you have. The first thing that comes to your mind that you would suggest someone does with their manuscript when they're trying to edit it themselves to get it into the best possible position before they share it. Is there something that you notice that you're often giving feedback on, even with the manuscripts that have already gone through editing with agents? Or, what would be kind of your top tip for people to get their manuscripts ready? Something that they could do that would help them get the objectivity they need to be able to read it, with a fresh perspective. Katie, you look ready to
Well,
go.
I was just going to say, I think the most important thing is, and it's funny because it sounds so simple, but actually a lot of writers, I think, sort of get to a point with their manuscript where they think, this doesn't quite work and this doesn't quite work, and I'd quite like to change this, but maybe what I want is a professional opinion at this point. And obviously that would be like a wonderful position to be in, but given the weight of submissions that everyone's receiving, both us and agents, more importantly, the most important thing is for you to feel like you are 100% happy with the manuscript that you're submitting. And that doesn't mean that you think it's the best thing that's ever been written, or that you have the kind of, unshakable confidence that is kind of hard to find in your own writing. But you should feel like every plot point makes sense to you, and that you are happy on a sentence level with your writing, and that you don't feel that there is anything that could be cut. You don't feel that there is, anything that doesn't quite work. You feel confident in the ending. You feel confident how everything comes together. And I know that kind of sounds simplistic, but I think often you can get to a point with a manuscript where you feel a bit like, I don't really know where to go with this. And actually the best thing to do would be to take some space, come back to it, maybe ask a friend to read it. I mean, the thing about editing also is that so much of it is actually kind of simple, like question asking, like, why does this character think like this? If you read a book and you think, I don't really understand why this character's done this, or I don't really understand why these events have happened, it doesn't really feel kind of well explained. Obviously there is a skill to professional editing, but actually someone reading it and saying, I don't really understand why this has happened. If you can't explain why you've made every decision in the book that you've made, then I think that's when you need to go back and think, okay, how can I make this feel authentic to me? And how can I feel confident in every decision that I've made and every sentence that I've written? And then at that point, that's a good opportunity to then send it out to review.
Excellent. That is great advice, Katie. Joelle, have you anything to add to that, or anything else you think people should consider?
Yes, a few points. I actually have a bit of technical advice. I would say listen to your manuscript. And what I mean is that if you have written it in, let's say, Microsoft Word, click read aloud and listen to it. Don't look at the manuscript once you've written it, actually listen to it. It might actually sound different to what you have put on the page, and you might actually catch not just typos, but just inconsistencies. You might actually catch things that you're like, oh, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't look kind of right. Oh, that's a bit weird. It's a style of editing that I've been practicing over the past couple of years, and not just using my eyes, using your ears as well. It's really interesting how you can catch things and make your work stronger by actually listening to your manuscript if you can. I think that's great. And like Katie said, if you have people in your life who you trust to give you feedback, or just read, or just give you the positives, or just or ask you questions about it, that can help you too. And I would also say, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, know your ending. What do you want the author, what do you want the reader, whether it's the editor, your future agent, or whatever, or the actual readers who might pick it up as an ebook or in a bookshop or whatever, what do you want them to go away with? What answers have you left them with? That kind of thing. Know your ending. Know how you want the reader to feel, whether it's disgust or concern, or feel satisfied or whatever. Have a feeling of how you want the reader to feel, and by the ending of your book.
Oh, that's such great advice, Joelle. I mean, we often encourage our writers that we're working with to read their work aloud, but that idea of having it read to you, I think it gives an even, further kind of distance that allows you to hear it. So that's really great advice. Thank you, Joelle. Sam, anything that you would encourage people to consider?
Yeah, I think everything that has been said is really helpful. The listening to it advice is really interesting. I have to admit, I've not done that as an editor, and I can see it being really useful for writers. The thing I was going to say is similar but different, which is change the font and print it out, and don't look at it on the screen, look at it on paper and try and see it in a different way. I'm sure some of you have experienced the Substack thing of writing your article and then hitting publish and then seeing all the mistakes. As soon as it's up there in a different format, that's when you see it. So try and get yourself through that process and try and see it with a different and fresh pair of eyes. You've got to have good reasons if you're not just submitting it in Times New Roman 12-point double spaced. I want to know, sometimes there are good reasons, but generally just keep it as clean and simple as possible. Another little thing you can do on those lines is make sure you put page numbers on, because there's nothing more annoying than printing out the manuscript and realizing that it doesn't have page numbers on it. Think about the bits. Think about, for instance, the bits in italics and the bits that are kind of slightly separate. And do they really need to be there? Or are the italics bits actually saying skip me? I mean, that's what I normally think when I see italics. And on that note, don't give 8 pages of italics as the start of your book, because that generally just says skip me. And that's a good general principle as well. The bits that people don't want to read, they shouldn't be in the book. So think about those things.
Oh, that's all excellent advice. That's brilliant. Gosh, we only have 30 minutes left. I can't believe it. I could listen to you all talk forever about this. And we've loads of questions coming through. My colleague has helpfully selected some for me and sent them over here to me as a message with them all together to expedite me getting through them. So what I'll do is I'll fly through as many of these questions as we can, and you can just jump in if you feel you have an answer for it, and we'll see how many we can get through. So I'm combining 2 questions here together, which one was about your approach to working with debut authors who may not be familiar with the publishing process, which also kind of dovetails with another question that came through, which is that, the publishing process can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster. You're dealing with rejection, of course, but also it can be as discombobulating to get the success of actually signing your publishing deal. So I think these are all coming together in a question really about managing expectations as a writer from what the publishing experience might be like, looking after your well-being. Have any of you any thoughts on this, on what writers can do to maybe help themselves through this process?
Don't look at reads.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
Sorry. Yeah.
No.
I mean, I'm a writer as well, and I've had different kinds of experiences, some really positive, some really negative. But I think for everyone, especially your first book, it's hard. It's hard because you have, it's this thing you've worked on for so long. You have a lot of control in it. You're controlling every word, and then suddenly there's nothing more you can do, and it's out there. There's not that much your publisher can do even really once it's published. And they've submitted it for as many reviews as they can and tried to persuade shops to take it and done all of that stuff. You've just got to come to terms with the fact that it's out there and it's done, and you've got to make a kind of peace with that, which is easier said than done. And it's a psychologically difficult thing as well, because so much of your goal is to be published, and then when it happens, you're kind of, what now? But there are great, wonderful things about it. I mean, I tell writers to be very cautious about looking at reviews and believing them, good or bad. But hearing from readers who your book has touched is a wonderful thing, and those things will happen to you as well. But yeah, don't look at Goodreads is one of the primary things. Don't look at the kind of the places on social media where people are going to want to hurt you.
Yes, great advice. Joelle, you had something you were going to share with us.
Yeah, just a few things. And like Sam said, actually, a lot of editors are writers as well. Not everyone, but we do have this kind of shared sense of, compassion, because we know what it's like. And also, especially if you're a debut, we do have an understanding that this is your first experience of this very magical, secretive world that you've likely been trying to get into for quite some time. So we do take that on board. And I'm quite pleased with the kind of author care that we provide at Penguin. It was something that I didn't really do in my kind of junior kind of time, but now I've actually kind of matured a little bit in this role. It's something that is really, really important, the mental health of an author. And if you are agented as well, that's something that you the relationship between the author and agent is really good for that kind of emotional support. Whereas I think with an editor, it's a little bit different because we don't represent you in the same way your agent does. You know, we represent the publisher. And so as much as we care about your well-being, and you know, it's a collaboration, and you know, this is a relationship. This is, you know, books sometimes take years to publish, and so it's a relationship where we want it to be as smooth and as you know, lots of communication along the way, and so we always take that into account. But yeah, like Sam says, I always say that when you've actually published your book or you're going through the process, it might be exciting to read reviews. Your book might be really well received, or it might be a bit lukewarm, or it might not be well received. I do try to say, even if you're getting great reviews, try not to read the comments, because people are more likely to post negative comments than good ones. People just want to get it off their chest that they didn't like something. That's just human nature. So it just is what it is. And so you don't want to kind of break your own heart by doing that, you know. And I would also say that I think sometimes when you've actually, let's say you've got an agent, or let's say you've now got a book deal, sometimes the experience can actually be quite underwhelming. Sometimes you think, oh my God, like you've dreamt of this moment for years and years and years. And then when it finally happens, you kind of feel like, oh, okay, is that it? I thought there'd be, you know, cannons and confetti, and I'd be sitting in a big boardroom signing my contract, and, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And I think sometimes if that doesn't happen, you're a bit like, is this it? I've got a book deal. Now I've got to look through a contract, and now I've got to, you know, actually write the book. And I think sometimes having good people around you who you can talk to, so whether it's family, friends, but also an agent, and you know, to an extent your editor as well, let us know how you're feeling. It's really, really important. Publishing should be an enjoyable experience. It should be fun. You know, this is a creative industry, and you're providing your work and giving it out to the world, which is such a, you know, it's such a joy to be a part of an author's process. So it should be fun. And so I think as long as you try and understand your emotions and, you know, communicate to the people in your lives what you're going through, that can make the experience a lot easier for you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joelle. How about you, Katie? Is there anything you'd like to add to that? Or
just that I think it's good to think of the process as a collaborative team effort, even though that's not to take away, you know, the fact that the creative work is obviously all yours, but you would be working with an agent, you'd be working with an editor, you'd be working with a publicist, and all of those people together are hugely invested in the publication. So I think it is helpful for writers to think of it as a team publication where we're all invested together. It just takes some of the responsibility off you as an individual. And also, I just would echo what everyone else says. I mean, I think you have to believe in your work and the value of your work, regardless of what anyone says about it, good or bad, because it can be so easy to tie your self-esteem to a great review or someone telling you something brilliant about your book. And then that self-esteem can plummet when you don't get that feedback the next week. And actually understanding that your work has value inherently in of itself, I think, and if you can try and hold that separate to some of the feedback, external feedback you get, that can be really helpful.
that's excellent. Thank you so much, Katie. So, I mean, the last question I have here, because I think it'll probably take you a minute or so to answer this, so it might be bring us up to the end, is I guess a big one, but some people are asking for a little bit of insight into what happens after you have acquired the book and you are beginning to edit, because, you know, people are thinking they have already maybe gone through lots of rounds of edits, you know, with their agent before it gets to you. You've obviously fallen in love with the book enough to take it to acquisitions, to champion it, to offer the book deal. And so then it's confusing, I think, for some people to think about. So then the editing starts after all of that. So maybe you can just share a little bit of an insight into what happens next, or how much editing someone might expect to happen, you know, once they've signed their book deal. So Joelle, would you like to kick us off there? Oh, sorry, just as you're about to drink, sorry. Katie, maybe you can start us off.
Yeah, so I mean, depending on obviously how your manuscript came to the editor, if it was directly submitted, this might not be the case, but very often when I see manuscripts from agents, an agent will have already gone through a couple of rounds of edits with an author. So often when I see it, but agents edit in a slightly lighter way, to allow freedom for an editor to then, take it in the direction that they want it to, or they often do anyway. So you may have had a couple of rounds of edits with an agent who usually will focus less on a line level and more on a kind of structural edit. Then it will come to us, we'll acquire the book, and then that's, I was going to say immediately, it really depends on how efficient we are at getting you the notes, but from that moment, that is when the editing begins, and the editing will normally be done, well, actually it depends, I don't want to speak for other editors, but I tend to do it in several stages. I would normally do at least 2 rounds, sometimes 3 rounds of edits with an author, and as you start from big to small. So you ask, address some of the big questions first, like, does the ending work? Does this character even need to be here? Is this plot making sense? And then I would go on to a kind of second structural edit where it's thinking about, are these chapters in the right place? Do things take place in the order that they're supposed to happen? And then the third round of edits, I would really go in at a line level and think, does every sentence earn its place in this book? And if not, can it be changed or can it be removed? And then that's when I let go of the book, and well, to an extent, and it goes to a copy editor who then is like even more closely involved in checking consistencies, making sure that, every character is doing and saying the things that they said they were going to be doing 2 pages ago, and making sure that the kind of objects they're using were existing in the time at which you're writing and things like that. I love getting copy editor notes because they're very good on slang and whether that was kind of, appropriate for the historical time in which the novel's set and things like that. And then you have a proofread where a proofreader checks for grammar and typos. So by the time you get to publication, your book has been read many times by lots of people, and still they often have mistakes in them when they're published. So I don't understand how that happens. But the editing process can be long and starts from big to small and should feel creatively exciting, I think, and should push you to take your work in the direction that you really want to take it in. And also, just to note, because we were talking about this earlier at the beginning before everyone joined, editors, it's always again a collaboration. It's not a set of instructions to follow. It's a set of questions to ask, really. I see it as questions to ask, and I think an author always knows their book better than you do. And again, it comes back to that thing of knowing why you've made every decision you've made. If you know why you've made every decision you've made, the edit will be a conversation rather than instructions.
That's great. I mean, we're just in the last kind of dying moments of the call. Joelle or Sam, is there anything you'd like to add to that? That felt like a really excellent overview of what would be my experience of the editorial process. But does either of your approaches differ from that at all, or anything you'd like to add?
Mine's really similar to Katie's as well. I do a couple edits with the author at a macro level first, and then smaller and smaller until we get to more of the line. And yeah, like you said, it is a collaboration. We do not work for you. I think it's really important for authors to know that, but also you don't work for us. It is a collaboration, and more people will join in on your journey to create your book. And so at the end of the day, it's your book. I always say it's your name that's going on the front cover and on the spine. None of us will ever publish a book you're not happy with or confident with. We are anonymous people. We are the tiny little logo on the book. You are on the spine and you're on the front cover. It's your work, it's your baby, it's your child. So we'll never publish anything you're not happy with, but we will have to ask questions. That's our job. We want to make it the strongest book possible. And for that to happen, we need to ask you, why does this character do this? Or if it's nonfiction, are you sure about this? Can we fact check this? Why don't we think about this or from this angle or that angle? It's always about asking questions. I think sometimes people think it's us just putting a red line through this saying, this is terrible, this is nonsense. But no, it's usually us in track changes with the comment section and Word, just typing away lots of questions for you to answer. And it's a communication, it's dialogue between author and editor.
Okay. Sam?
Yeah, all of that was great. Really good insights. It feels pretty similar to my process, Ellie's process. I guess the thing I can add is that every book is different. So as you're reading the book, you learn how to edit it in a way. So there are no hard and fast rules. And sometimes the best editing is doing nothing at all, of course, and just realizing that something works. But sometimes it is, you have to do more. But it's all about connecting the book with the reader in the best possible way. And very often it's just a case of taking away, the things that might be obstacles between the writer's vision and the reader. And as the editor, you're the first reader in a way. So you kind of see things that the reader sees that the writer who's been so involved in the other side of the process might not be aware of. So you're doing that kind of reader advocacy. But that's it. Everything everyone else has said is also super helpful and true.
I just can't thank you all enough for how generous you've been with your insights and your experience and your advice for everybody this evening. Your publishing houses and your partner, Ellie, Sam, are very lucky to have you as ambassadors for the work that you're doing. And all of your writers are incredibly privileged to work with you. You speak so beautifully about your work, and it's clear how much passion you have for your writers and the work that you're doing. So it's a real treat for us all to get an inside look at what the experience is like from your side. We've had way more questions than we've had time to answer, but maybe if people can find you on socials, they can, send you questions that way if there's anything that's come up this evening that we haven't had a chance to follow. But for those who are interested, like I mentioned, we have our Meet the Agents event on Tuesday, the 8th of July, where you can get advice from literary agents about that whole side of the business. Then we have another event on submitting to literary journals on July 10th with editors from some literary journals. And after that, 3 amazing creative writing workshops in children's fiction, creative nonfiction, and short story writing. So there'll be loads of other opportunities for us all to get together and talk about writing and talk about publishing. So for now, I will say thank you so much to all of our audience for being here with us this evening. There's 119 people still here. That feels remarkable. If any of them ever end up being published by Joelle or Katie or Sam, let us know that this is where the magic happened. But for now, I'll say thank you so much, Katie, Sam, and Joelle, for being here, and best of luck with everybody with all your onward writerly journeys. Happy travels, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.